This is the story of the day when I embarked on an excursion with my wife, her sister, a femme fatale to my sanity, and their parents who have a weird obsession with slapstick humor that's reminiscent of a poorly acted Charlie Chaplin film. An itinerary promising a visit to the zoo followed by a game at the Busch Stadium, an event comparable to attempting to rub your belly while patting your head, only with an audience and way more potential for embarrassment. My morning began with the sister-in-law's relentless flirtation, an offer that held as much appeal as a stale bowl of cereal. She might have been recently divorced, but I was definitely not her next pit stop on the roundabout of love. My wife, unaware of her sister's intentions, innocently anticipated a day filled with laughter, animal sightings, and home runs. This innocence formed the basis of my constant silence on the matter. At the zoo, the animals mirrored my own expressions of terror and bemusement as we journeyed from exhibit to exhibit. My wife, bless her heart, had a bizarre fear of birds that could be traced back to a traumatic incident with a pigeon, while I had an obsession with anything that had feathers and a beak. Conveniently, this gave her sister just the window of opportunity she needed. While I was engrossed in an intense staring contest with a toucan, the sister-in-law slid into the space beside me, her advances as subtle as a jackhammer. Fighting her off was like trying to learn Latin while defusing a bomb. I came to see the exotic birds, not to play a game of handsy twister with my wife's sister. As we stood in front of the toucan cage, I could practically feel the tension radiating off my sister-in-law. She was like a game show host, and I was the contestant who'd unwittingly signed up for the wrong show. "Oh, look at that toucan," she began, her tone dripping with feigned innocence. "Did you know its beak is really light despite its size? Just like some other things. Don't you agree?" Her voice dropped to a whisper, her double entendre hanging in the air like a bad smell. I swiftly turned my gaze back to the toucan, hoping my silence would serve as a deterrent. But of course it was wishful thinking. She leaned in closer, her words carried on a gust of hot breath. "You know, these birds are quite the multitaskers. They use their beaks to stay cool, just like a personal fan. Isn't it interesting how one can be so resourceful?" The implication of her words was clear, but my goal was to keep my reaction, much like the toucan's beak, light and breezy. My only response was a nod, my eyes still trained on the toucan, its vibrant colors a welcome distraction from the uncomfortable conversation. But she was not to be ignored. "I bet it feels thrilling to hold one of their beaks in your hand. So much power in such a vibrant creature." Her voice was filled with an inflection I could only interpret as suggestive, a metaphor so thinly veiled it could have been a pane of glass. I cast her a sidelong glance, offering a non-committal, maybe. As she laughed in response, I found solace in the toucan's indifferent stare, its beady eyes seemingly saying, "You're on your own, buddy." Good God, man. It couldn't have been more obvious if she had undressed right there and jumped on me. The madness continued to the Busch Stadium, a place that was to me, a non-baseball enthusiast, an epitome of organized chaos. The buzz of the crowd and the chorus of cheers and groans filled the air as I slipped away to fetch some food. Naturally, she decided to tag along. Seizing the chance to find some secluded corner, she began her relentless pursuit. For a moment, I thought I was part of some cheesy rom-com where the protagonist is coerced into a janitor's closet for a steamy makeout session. But this was no Hollywood flick, and I was certainly not keen on playing the part. As we weaved through the bustling crowd towards the concession stand, the sister-in-law resumed her campaign of uncomfortably suggestive comments. "You know," she began, leaning in close as though sharing a secret, "I've always found the energy at these games invigorating. It's all so raw and passionate, kind of like, well, you understand." She offered a coy smile, her words hanging in the air like an uninvited guest. With a skill acquired from a day of navigating her advances, I replied, "Yes, the energy here is indeed captivating. Everyone is so passionate about baseball." I tried to redirect the conversation to safer waters, but she was not so easily deterred. "Isn't it exciting how the game just keeps you on edge, always edging you closer and closer to those climactic moments?" she continued, ignoring my deliberate attempt to steer the conversation. "One minute you're sitting relaxed, and the next you're up on your feet, heart pounding, shouting. Oh God, it's so stimulating." Her voice dropped to a whisper on the last word, the suggestion clear in her tone. I simply nodded, my eyes on the menu board as I replied, "Yep, those hot dogs sure do get the adrenaline pumping." The sarcasm wasn't subtle, but then neither was she. The day was almost over, and soon I would be free from this awkward game of conversational dodgeball. So I opted for some diversionary tactics, asking her to buy one of those big sausages. Maybe choking down on a foot long would serve as an effective deterrent. Though in retrospect, I can admit that this wasn't my finest moment of problem solving. The baseball game was just as I expected, full of ebbs and flows, accompanied by the raucous laughter of my in-laws, whose sense of humor was as slapstick as it gets. They found joy in every clumsy mishap, every fallen hot dog, every spilled beer, their laughter an echoing cacophony in my ears. The Ballpark experience is never complete without the legendary kiss cam. It's a cliché, but a cherished one at that. When it panned to us, my sister-in-law, primed for her moment of mischief, plastered a vivacious grin on her face. I could feel my stomach drop as she leaned in, closing the gap between us. With the same reflexes I wish I had when I found myself in awkward social situations, I quickly pointed to my wife. Navigating through the sea of spectators, I pulled her into a kiss instead, leaving my sister-in-law in an unexpected solitude. The crowd erupted into a chorus of laughter, turning the awkward moment into a comical spectacle. My wife's parents were, of course, the loudest laughers in the crowd, their sense of humor as slapstick as ever. They thrived on moments like these. My father-in-law, never one to miss an opportunity for a punchline, leaned over and said in a voice loud enough for our little group to hear, "Well, I guess he just passed the sister-in-law test," which set off another wave of laughter. I'm not sure he knew how profoundly accurate his statement actually was. For them, it was a moment of hilarity, a story that would surely make it to the next family gathering. For me, it was another ridiculous chapter in an already absurd day. But with a resigned smile and a shrug, I conceded to the mirth around me. After all, the day was nearly over, and it seemed like this was one more toucan ordeal I'd managed to sidestep. As the innings wore on, the sisters' flirtatious behavior seemed to plateau, either worn out by the day, or perhaps the sausage had indeed worked its magic. However, the overall atmosphere of the stadium, electric despite our team's loss, was an unexpected delight. The glow of the stadium lights, the cheering crowd, it was all quite a spectacle. As the day winded down, our team took a resounding loss, and the parents, although still laughing, were showing signs of fatigue. The sister, possibly contemplating her failed mission, was uncharacteristically quiet. In that moment, a sense of relief washed over me. The day, as ridiculous as it had been, was finally over. I had endured a relentless barrage of advances, slapstick comedy that could make a mime cry, and a baseball game that reminded me of my strong dislike for the sport. Yet, there was a strange sense of accomplishment. I had survived the day. I had preserved the peace. I returned home, my heart swelling with relief, my wife beside me, oblivious to the insanity of the day, her hand entwined in mine. The sister-in-law, the parents, the zoo, the game, all faded into the background as I drifted into the quiet comfort of home and the familiar routine of everyday life. Good God Almighty, what a day. What on earth is going on with that sister-in-law? How do you feel he handled his day? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below. When you subscribe, be sure to click the notification bell. Click here for more Tangled threads.